Captain Sarah Chen stared at the massive holographic display floating above the bridge of the ESS Defiance, humanity's last remaining battleship. The blue glow of star charts illuminated her weathered face as she watched thousands of red dots moving across the galaxy map like a spreading infection. Each dot represented a void-born fleet, and they were everywhere. "Ma'am, we're receiving the final transmission from the Galactic Council," reported Lieutenant Hayes, his voice barely steady. The young communications officer had aged years in the past few weeks, watching civilization crumble around them. Sarah nodded grimly. She already knew what the message would contain, but protocol demanded they hear it. "Put it through, Lieutenant." The hologram shifted, replacing the tactical display with the image of Chancellor Xerion, the crystalline being who had led the Galactic Council for over 3 centuries. His normally pristine faceted surface now showed cracks of stress, and his telepathic voice carried a weight of defeat that made even the hardened human crew shift uncomfortably. "To all remaining forces of the Galactic Alliance," Xerion began, his mental voice echoing in their minds. "After careful consideration and analysis of our current strategic position, the Council has voted unanimously to implement Protocol 77 Alpha. All military forces are to immediately withdraw to designated safe zones beyond the galactic rim. Civilian populations will be evacuated to prepared colonies in the Andromeda Spiral. The Milky Way galaxy is hereby declared a total loss." Sarah felt her jaw clench as murmurs of disbelief rippled through her bridge crew. She had expected this, but hearing it spoken aloud still hit like a physical blow. "The void-born threat has proven beyond our capacity to contain," Xerion continued. "Their adaptive technology and reproductive capabilities make victory impossible with current resources. All ships are ordered to rendezvous at staging areas for immediate evacuation. This transmission will repeat for 72 hours, after which all communication networks will be permanently shut down to prevent void-born infiltration." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing the same mixture of shock and anger on every face. These were good people, humans and aliens who had served together for years, fought side by side against pirates and raiders and hostile governments. Now they were being told to abandon everything they had sworn to protect. "Captain?" came a voice from behind her. Sarah turned to see Admiral Marcus Webb emerging from the tactical station, his weathered face set in hard lines. Webb had commanded the Terran Defense Fleet for 15 years, leading humanity's forces through 3 major conflicts. If anyone understood the weight of this decision, it was him. "Admiral," Sarah acknowledged with a slight nod. "You heard the order," Webb said quietly, but his voice carried to every corner of the bridge. "The Council wants us to run with our tails between our legs while the Void-born consume everything we've built." Sarah studied his expression carefully. In all her years serving under Webb, she had never seen him look quite like this. There was something dangerous in his eyes, a cold fire that spoke of decisions already made. "What are your orders, sir?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Webb moved to the central command console, his hands clasping behind his back in a gesture every human military officer recognized. "Patch me through to all human vessels in the fleet. Emergency authorization, Alpha 77. Lieutenant Hayes's fingers flew over his controls. Then he looked up with confirmation. "All human ships responding, Admiral. 43 vessels total." "All human vessels. This is Admiral Webb," he began, his voice carrying the authority of decades of command. "You have all heard the Council's evacuation order. I want every captain to understand something very clearly. This order applies to Council forces. We are not Council forces. We are human forces, operating under Terran Defense Authority." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. What Webb was suggesting bordered on mutiny, but technically he was correct. Humanity had joined the Galactic Alliance as an independent member, not as a subject species. The Voidborn destroyed the Altair system 2 days ago, Webb continued, his voice growing harder. 15 billion souls gone. They consumed the industrial complexes at Vega Prime, turning our own manufacturing capability against us. They have taken Proxima Centauri, cutting off our fastest supply routes to Earth. On the tactical display, Sarah could see the human fleet beginning to tighten formation around the Defiance. Destroyers and cruisers, cargo haulers and support vessels, all moving with purpose toward their flagship. Each of you has family back on Earth, Webb said. Each of you has taken an oath to defend human space against all enemies. The Voidborn are 3 systems away from Sol. At their current advance rate, they will reach Earth in 14 days. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. 14 days. Her daughter lived on Luna Station, working as an engineer in the orbital shipyards. Her parents had a small farm on Earth's surface in the Asian agricultural zone. 14 days until the Voidborn arrived to consume them all. The Council has given up, Webb declared. They're running scared, abandoning this galaxy to save their own skins. That's their choice. But we're human beings, and we don't abandon our own. The bridge fell completely silent. Sarah could hear the subtle hum of the ship's engines, the quiet beeping of monitoring systems, the nervous breathing of her crew. Everyone was waiting for the Admiral to cross the line they all knew he was approaching. All human vessels will disregard Council evacuation orders, Webb announced. We're going home. We're going to Earth, and we're going to make our stand there. Any captain who wishes to follow Council orders is free to do so. I will not think less of any officer who chooses to preserve their crew rather than fight a hopeless battle. Sarah watched her tactical display as the human fleet continued to form up. Not a single ship broke away. Admiral, came a voice over the comm. Sarah recognized Captain Liu of the destroyer Yorktown. What's the plan, sir? The Council projections show the Voidborn have a 15-to-1 numerical advantage. Their technology adapts faster than we can develop countermeasures. How exactly do we fight something like that? Webb was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah could see him considering his words carefully. Captain Liu, are you familiar with humanity's military history? Yes, sir. Fairly well. Then you'll remember that humans have never been very good at accepting impossible odds. We have a talent for finding ways to win battles we're not supposed to survive. Sometimes it's superior tactics. Sometimes it's better technology. Sometimes it's just being too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Sarah found herself nodding along with the Admiral's words. She thought of the old stories her grandfather had told her about World War II, about Pacific Island battles where small forces had held out against overwhelming odds, about Stalingrad and the Battle of Britain and countless other moments when human determination had overcome seemingly impossible circumstances. The Voidborn are machines, Webb continued. Sophisticated machines, yes, but machines nonetheless. They adapt and consume and reproduce, but they don't innovate. They don't take risks. They don't make desperate gambits or throw away the rule book when the situation demands it. Sir, interrupted Commander Torres from the Liberator, even if we can find a way to fight them effectively, we're still talking about holding Earth against an enemy that just consumed 3/4 of the galaxy. How do we protect an entire planet? We don't, Webb said simply. We can't protect Earth by standing in front of it. The Voidborn will just go around us or through us. But we can make them pay such a price for taking our world that they think twice before trying to consume anything else. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she began to understand what the Admiral was suggesting. It was insane, but there was a twisted logic to it. We're going to turn the Sol system into a trap, Webb explained. We're going to make the Voidborn think they're getting an easy meal, and then we're going to show them exactly what happens when you threaten humanity's home. The plan, as Webb outlined it over the next hour, was audacious beyond belief. They would allow the Voidborn to enter the Sol system, let them begin their attack on Earth, and then spring a carefully coordinated assault designed to destroy as many enemy ships as possible. It was a suicide mission disguised as a tactical operation, but Sarah could see the brilliance in it. "Admiral," she said, when he had finished explaining the broad strokes, "this plan requires us to sacrifice Earth's orbital defenses. We'd be gambling everything on a single engagement." "Yes," Webb acknowledged. "That's exactly what we're doing. But consider the alternative, Captain. If we run now, Earth falls in 2 weeks anyway. At least this way, we go down fighting." Sarah looked around her bridge crew, seeing the same grim determination on every face. These people had families, too, loved ones they would never see again if this plan failed. But they also understood what Webb was offering them, a chance to make their deaths matter. "All vessels, prepare for jump to Sol system," Webb ordered. "We have 14 days to prepare for the last battle of the human Voidborn War. Let's make sure it's one they'll remember." As the human fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives, Sarah found herself thinking about her daughter again. Luna was brilliant, one of the best engineers in the fleet. The Sol system hummed with desperate activity as humanity's last fleet arrived home. Earth hung like a blue jewel against the star field, its orbital stations glittering like diamonds, as millions of people worked around the clock to implement Admiral Webb's insane plan. What they were building had never been attempted before, and if the calculations were wrong, they would all die for nothing. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in the zero-gravity environment of Luna Station's main engineering bay, her augmented reality display showing complex schematics that would have given most people headaches. As Earth's leading expert on exotic matter physics, she had been pulled into the project the moment the human fleet arrived. What Admiral Webb wanted to build was theoretically possible, but the margin for error was smaller than an atom's nucleus. "The resonance cascade has to be perfect," she explained to the assembled team of engineers and scientists. "If we're off by even 1%, the quantum field will collapse before it can destabilize the Voidborn ships. We get one shot at this." Captain Sarah Chen watched from the observation deck as her daughter worked with the engineering teams. Luna Chen had grown up around starships, but she had never worked on anything like this. The weapon they were constructing would turn the fundamental forces of physics into a trap for the Voidborn fleet. "Mom," Luna said, floating up to join Sarah at the observation window, "Dr. Vasquez is asking for direct access to the Defiant's main computer core. She needs to integrate the targeting systems with the quantum field generators." Sarah nodded, though part of her wanted to grab her daughter and put her on the next transport to the outer colonies. "Whatever she needs. How much more time do you require?" 72 hours minimum," Luna replied. "Maybe 96 if we encounter problems with the exotic matter containment. The Voidborn will be here in 6 days. 6 days to complete a project that should have taken months. 6 days to build a weapon that existed only in theoretical papers and computer simulations. 6 days to save humanity or watch it burn. Across the system, similar scenes were playing out on every human world and station. Mars had become a massive ammunition factory, its automated systems working overtime to produce specialized warheads designed to disrupt Voidborn regeneration systems. The asteroid belt mining operations had been converted to construct debris fields that would channel the approaching enemy fleet into kill zones. Even the outer system research stations were contributing, using their deep space sensors to track the approaching threat. Admiral Webb stood in the Defiance's war room, studying tactical displays that showed the approaching Voidborn armada. The alien fleet was massive beyond comprehension, tens of thousands of ships ranging from small fighters to planet-sized dreadnoughts. Each vessel was a living machine, capable of adapting to new threats and reproducing itself using consumed matter. "They'll reach the outer system perimeter in 144 hours. reported Intelligence Officer Commander Park. Long-range scans show they're maintaining standard formation patterns. No indication they suspect a trap. Good, Webb replied. What about the evacuation status? Civilian transport is 60% complete. Most of the population has been moved to the deep underground shelters on Earth and Mars. The orbital habitats that can't be evacuated have been equipped with emergency life support for extended sieges. Webb nodded grimly. Even if their plan succeeded, millions would likely die before it was over. The Voidborn didn't take prisoners or negotiate surrenders. They consumed everything they encountered, adding the biomass to their collective intelligence and the technology to their adaptive capabilities. "Admiral," came a voice from the communications station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council emergency frequency." Webb's expression darkened. "Put it through." The main display shifted to show Chancellor Zarion again, but this time he wasn't alone. Representatives from dozens of species stood behind him, their faces showing various expressions of concern and disapproval. "Admiral Webb," Zarion began, his telepathic voice carrying undertones of frustration. "We have detected your fleet's presence in the Sol system. You were ordered to evacuate to the staging areas beyond the galactic rim." "Chancellor," Webb replied with formal politeness. "With respect, those orders were given to Galactic Council forces. I command the Terran Defense Fleet, operating under independent authority." "This is not the time for legal technicalities," interjected Ambassador Keth 9 of the Synthetic Collective. The robotic being's optical sensors glowed red with agitation. "The Voidborn cannot be defeated with conventional tactics. Your species' tendency toward aggressive behavior will only result in unnecessary casualties." Webb felt his temper flare but kept his voice level. "Ambassador, my species' aggressive behavior has been the only thing standing between your people and extinction for the past 5 years. We've fought the Voidborn in 17 major engagements while the Council debated evacuation procedures." "And you lost every one of those battles," pointed out General Threx of the Draconian Empire. The reptilian being's scales shifted to aggressive yellow patterns. "Your stubborn refusal to accept reality has cost millions of lives." "No," Webb shot back. "Our willingness to fight has bought millions of lives. Every day we delayed the Voidborn advance was another day for civilian evacuations, another day for your people to prepare their escape routes. We've been covering your retreat for 5 years, and now you want us to abandon our own people?" "The Earth cannot be saved," Zarion stated with the finality of mathematical certainty. "Our computer models have run every possible scenario. The Voidborn force approaching your system is too large to defeat. Evacuation is the only logical response." Webb was quiet for a long moment, studying the faces of the alien representatives. These were beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, who had built a civilization spanning billions of stars. They had technology that bordered on magical, resources that seemed unlimited, and intelligence that had solved countless seemingly impossible problems. And they were running away. "Chancellor," Webb said finally, "with all due respect to your computer models, they don't account for one variable." "Which is?" "Human stubbornness." Webb gestured to the tactical display showing the approaching Voidborn fleet. "Your models assume rational behavior, logical responses to overwhelming odds. But humans aren't always rational. Sometimes we do stupid things because they're the right things to do." "Sentiment will not deflect Voidborn weapons," observed Dr. Kellyan of the Scientific Consortium. "Emotional attachment to a location will not protect it from consumption." "You're right," Webb agreed. "But emotional attachment to our people will make us fight harder than your models predict. It will make us take risks your computers would never calculate. It will make us try things that shouldn't work, but sometimes do anyway." The alien representatives exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a subtle buzz of conversation. Sarah, watching from the observation deck, could see them struggling to understand what Webb was telling them. "Admiral," Zarion said finally, "if you insist on this course of action, the Council cannot provide support. You will be on your own." "We've been on our own since this war started," Webb replied. "The only difference now is that we're not pretending otherwise." The transmission ended, leaving the war room in silence. Sarah could see the weight of the decision settling on the Admiral's shoulders. In the space of a few minutes, he had effectively severed humanity's relationship with the galactic community. They were now truly alone against an enemy that had conquered most of the known galaxy. "Sir," said Commander Park quietly, "long-range sensors are detecting something unusual in the Voidborn formation." Webb moved to the sensor station, studying the incoming data. The Voidborn fleet was maintaining its approach, but there were subtle changes in their formation patterns. Ships were redistributing themselves, creating new configurations that the human analysts had never seen before. "They're adapting," observed Dr. Miller, the fleet's chief xenobiologist. "The Voidborn collective intelligence has analyzed our previous battle tactics. They're preparing for the kind of defensive engagement we've fought before." Sarah felt a cold smile cross her face. Then they're in for a surprise. Over the next 4 days, the Sol system transformed into the largest military trap in human history. The quantum field generators that Luna and Dr. Vasquez had designed were positioned throughout the inner system, hidden among asteroid fields and debris clouds. The human fleet took positions that appeared defensive, but were actually designed to channel the Voidborn attack into specific vectors. Most importantly, they had done something that no other species had ever attempted in the war against the Voidborn. Instead of trying to protect their infrastructure, they had weaponized it. Every orbital station, every mining platform, every communications satellite had been converted into a potential bomb. When the time came, humanity would literally throw everything they had at the approaching enemy. "Final system check," reported Luna from the engineering bay. "All quantum field generators are online and synchronized. Exotic matter containment is stable. We're as ready as we're going to be." Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the tactical display as the Voidborn fleet entered the outer system. The enemy was moving exactly as predicted, their adaptive intelligence having prepared for a conventional defensive battle. They had no way of knowing that humanity had decided to throw out every rule of warfare ever written. "All ships, this is Admiral Webb," he broadcast to the human fleet. "In approximately 6 hours, the Voidborn will begin their attack on Earth. They expect us to fight like every other species they've encountered. They expect us to try to preserve our infrastructure while defending our people. They expect rational tactical responses to their assault." Sarah could see the determination on every face around her. These people knew they were about to die. They had made peace with that fact days ago. But they were also about to prove something that the rest of the galaxy had apparently forgotten. "They don't know humans very well," Webb continued. "Today we show them what happens when you threaten our home. Today we show them that some things are worth dying for. Today we remind the galaxy that humanity doesn't know how to quit." The Voidborn fleet swept through the outer system like a dark tide, consuming the unmanned monitoring stations and automated defenses that had been left as bait. Their ships began to adapt, growing new weapon configurations designed to penetrate the defensive formations they expected to encounter. The Sol system erupted in light as Operation Burning Sky commenced. What happened next would be remembered throughout the galaxy for millennia as the moment humanity proved that even impossible odds could be overcome by species willing to sacrifice everything for those they loved. Captain Sarah Chen gripped her command chair as the Defiance shuddered under the massive energy discharge of the quantum field generators. Throughout the inner system, hidden installations activated simultaneously, creating a web of exotic energy that began to tear at the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The Voidborn had never encountered anything like it because no other species had ever been desperate enough to weaponize the basic forces of physics. "Field generators at maximum output," reported Luna from the engineering station. "Quantum cascade is propagating through the target zone. We're getting massive resonance readings from the Voidborn ships." On the main tactical display, the approaching enemy fleet was beginning to show signs of distress. The sleek organic curves of their living ships were starting to buckle and warp as the quantum fields interfered with their molecular structure. For the first time in the war, Voidborn vessels were being damaged by something they couldn't immediately adapt to counter. "All fleet units, commence bombardment," Admiral Webb ordered. "Target the ships showing field damage. Don't let them recover." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Unlike previous engagements where they had tried to conserve ammunition for prolonged fighting, this time they held nothing back. Every weapon system, every missile tube, every energy cannon fired simultaneously. The space around Earth lit up like a new sun as thousands of warheads detonated against void-borne hulls, weakened by quantum field exposure. For a few precious minutes, it looked like the plan might actually work. Void-borne ships were dying, their adaptive systems overwhelmed by the combination of exotic physics and conventional firepower. The enemy fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just hours before, was reeling under an assault unlike anything they had ever faced. But the Voidborn were not called an extinction-level threat without reason. "Admiral," called Commander Park from the sensor station, his voice tight with concern. "The Voidborn fleet is changing formation. They're pulling back from the quantum field zones and concentrating their attack on the field generators themselves." Webb cursed under his breath. The enemy's collective intelligence had analyzed the new threat and developed a counter-strategy faster than anyone had hoped possible. Instead of continuing to fly into the quantum trap, they were now systematically destroying the installations that powered it. "Time until field collapse?" Webb demanded. 37 minutes if they maintain current rate of destruction," Dr. Vasquez reported from Luna Station. "We're losing generators faster than the cascade can sustain itself." Sarah watched the tactical display with growing dread. The quantum field that had given them their only advantage was already beginning to weaken. Once it collapsed completely, they would be back to conventional warfare against an enemy with overwhelming numerical superiority. "Sir," she called to Admiral Webb, "we need to implement Contingency 7. Webb was quiet for a long moment. Contingency 7 was the final phase of their plan, the option they had hoped never to use. It would guarantee maximum damage to the Voidborn fleet, but it would also ensure that no human in the Sol system would survive to see the outcome. "Confirmed," Webb said finally. "All units, execute Contingency 7. Authorization Alpha 7-7 Omega." Throughout the Sol system, a new level of desperation took hold. Space stations that had been converted into bombs prepared for manual detonation. Mining platforms loaded with antimatter charges positioned themselves in the paths of approaching Voidborn ships. Even civilian transports that had been evacuating refugees turned back toward the battle, their crews knowing they were flying to certain death, but determined to make their sacrifice count. Luna Chen looked up from her engineering console, meeting her mother's eyes across the bridge. "Mom, I need to go to the Quantum Field Control Center. If we're going to detonate the generators manually, someone has to coordinate the timing." Sarah felt her heart clench. The control center was in the most exposed section of Luna Station, directly in the path of the Voidborn assault. Anyone who went there would not be coming back. "I'll go," Sarah said immediately. "You're needed here to keep the field generators running as long as possible." "No," Luna replied firmly. "I designed the system. I know exactly how to maximize the yield when we blow the exotic matter containment. You need to stay with the fleet and make sure our people don't die for nothing." Before Sarah could protest further, Luna was already moving toward the airlock. She paused at the threshold, turning back to face her mother one last time. "Tell Dad I love him," Luna said quietly, "and tell him that his little girl grew up to be an engineer worth being proud of." Sarah wanted to stop her, wanted to order her to stay safe, wanted to be anywhere but watching her daughter volunteer for a suicide mission. Instead, she gave Luna the military salute their family had used for generations. "It's been an honor serving with you, Commander Chen," Sarah said formally. Luna smiled, returned the salute, and disappeared into the station's corridors. Across the system, similar scenes were playing out as humanity's defenders prepared for their final gambit. On Mars, General Harrison manually armed the planet's entire stockpile of antimatter warheads, turning the red planet into a massive bomb that would detonate when the Voidborn tried to consume its industrial complexes. In the asteroid belt, mining crews rigged their fusion reactors to overload, creating a chain reaction that would sweep through the mineral fields like wildfire. "Quantum field generators are being destroyed faster than projected," reported Dr. Vasquez. "We've lost 60% of the network. Cascade failure is imminent." Admiral Webb studied the tactical display one last time. The Voidborn fleet was adapting to their weapons, recovering from the initial surprise, but they were also deeply committed to their attack on the Sol system. They had suffered losses that would have crippled most fleets, yet they continued to advance because their collective intelligence calculated that victory was still achievable. They were about to discover their first major calculation error. "All units prepare for final detonation sequence," Webb announced. "Execute on my mark. It's been an honor serving with all of you." Luna reached the Quantum Field Control Center just as the first Voidborn boarding pods impacted Luna Station. The alien invaders were unlike anything in human experience, liquid metal beings that flowed through corridors like mercury, consuming everything they touched and adapting their forms for optimal combat efficiency. She sealed the control center blast doors and activated the manual override systems. The exotic matter containment fields were already showing stress fractures from the Voidborn assault, but she could probably keep them stable for another few minutes, long enough to ensure maximum yield when they finally let go. "Luna Station to all units," she broadcast. "Quantum field network is 30 seconds from manual detonation. All ships clear the inner system blast zone immediately." Outside the control center, she could hear the Voidborn cutting through the blast doors with weapons that converted matter into energy at the molecular level. They would be inside within minutes, but minutes were all she needed. "Luna," came her mother's voice over the comm. "I'm proud of you." "I know, Mom," Luna replied, her hands steady on the detonation controls despite the alien weapons cutting closer every second. "I know." Admiral Webb watched the tactical display as the human fleet pulled back from Earth orbit, moving to what they hoped would be safe distance from the coming explosion. The Voidborn were still advancing, their ships now swarming around Earth like predatory insects, beginning the consumption process that would strip the planet of all useful resources. "Mark," Webb said quietly. Luna Chen pressed the detonation control. The exotic matter containment fields throughout the Sol system failed simultaneously, releasing energies that had been contained only by humanity's most advanced technology. The quantum cascade that had been weakening the Voidborn ships suddenly reversed direction, creating a feedback loop that tore through the fabric of space-time itself. What happened next was later described by surviving Galactic Council scientists as a localized reality inversion. The fundamental laws of physics briefly changed within the Sol system, creating conditions that existed nowhere else in the known universe. Matter and energy behaved according to rules that had never been observed before, and the Voidborn fleet found itself trapped in a space where their adaptive technology could not function. The explosion was visible from neighboring star systems. When the exotic energies finally dissipated and space-time reasserted its normal properties, the Voidborn fleet had been completely destroyed. Not damaged, not disabled, but literally unmade at the quantum level. Their ships, their collective intelligence, their adaptive technology, all of it simply ceased to exist. Earth still hung in its orbit, scarred and burning but intact. Mars had been devastated by the energy wave, its surface transformed into a glassy plain that would glow for centuries. The outer planets had been pushed into slightly different orbits, and it would take decades to restore anything approaching normal life to the Sol system. But humanity had survived. 3 days later, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of Luna Station's observation deck, looking out at the debris field that had once been the largest invasion fleet in galactic history. She held a small data pad containing her daughter's final engineering report, detailed calculations that had allowed the quantum cascade to achieve maximum effectiveness. "Captain," came Admiral Webb's voice from behind her. "We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. Chancellor Zarion wants to speak with you personally." Sarah turned to find Webb approaching, his face showing the strain of the past week, but also something else, a quiet pride that she recognized from her years of military service. "Put him through, Admiral." The holographic display activated, showing Chancellor Zarion's crystalline form. But this time, the alien leader looked different. His faceted surface seemed brighter somehow, and when he spoke, his telepathic voice carried undertones of something Sarah had never heard from him before: respect. "Captain Chen," Zarion began, "I wanted to personally apologize for the Council's evacuation order. Our computer models indicated that defense of the Sol system was impossible. We were incorrect." "Chancellor," Sarah replied formally, "no apology is necessary. You made the best decision you could with the information available." "Perhaps," Zarion acknowledged, "but I believe we failed to account for something that cannot be quantified in our models. Your species possesses a quality that we have rarely encountered in our centuries of galactic governance, which is the willingness to sacrifice everything for others, not for abstract principles or strategic advantages, but for the simple reason that some things matter more than survival itself." Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking of Luna and the thousands of other humans who had given their lives to save a world they would never see again. "Chancellor," she said finally, "humanity would like to rejoin the Galactic Alliance, but this time, we'd like to discuss revisions to our member agreement." "What kind of revisions?" "The kind that put humans in charge of military operations against existential threats. It turns out we're pretty good at fighting impossible battles." Zarion's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with what might have been amusement. "I believe that can be arranged, Captain. The galaxy could use more people who don't know when they're beaten." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with the stars and the memory of her daughter's sacrifice. Around her, the Sol system was beginning the long process of reconstruction. Earth's orbital habitats were being rebuilt, Mars was being surveyed for eventual terraforming, and the human fleet was already making plans for new ships and new missions. The Voidborn were gone, but there would be other threats, other impossible battles to fight. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of enemies and challenges that would test humanity's resolve again and again. But as Sarah Chen looked out at the debris field that had once been an unstoppable invasion fleet, she found herself smiling. The Galactic Council had learned something important about humans during the Battle of Sol. When you abandon humanity to fight alone, you discover that alone is exactly how they fight best. The galaxy had given up on Earth, but Earth had never given up on itself. And that, more than any weapon or strategy, was what would keep humanity strong in the years to come. But humanity wasn't planning to fight a defensive battle. They were planning something that had never been tried before in the history of galactic warfare. They were going to turn their entire home system into a weapon and fire it at the enemy. As the first Void-born ships entered the inner system and began their attack on Earth's orbital defenses, Admiral Webb gave the order that would either save humanity or destroy it completely. "All units, execute Operation Burning Sky. Let's light this candle." Nyon could help implement the technical aspects of Webb's plan. It would be her. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah that she might be asking her own child to help build the weapon that would save or damn them all. The stars shifted around them as space folded, carrying humanity's last military force toward their home system, and what would either be their greatest victory or their final battle. Behind them, the Galactic Council's evacuation fleets continued their retreat toward Andromeda, abandoning the Milky Way to its fate. But humans had never been very good at running away from fights, especially when everything they loved was at stake. As the Defiance raced through hyperspace toward Earth, Sarah Chen allowed herself one small smile. The Voidborn were about to discover something that the rest of the galaxy had apparently forgotten. When you threaten humanity's family, humanity stops playing by the rules.